I've been with Esri for almost 10 years now, and I work with the kind of larger cities and counties in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Detroit, Southeast Michigan. But that's me going to maybe just a question before we start here. How many people are using like AutoCAD in their, okay. So you guys all know more about AutoCAD than I do. And how many are just on GIS, doesn't touch AutoCAD at all? Okay. So yeah, when I was thinking about this, I was focusing really on like the AutoCAD, the ArcGIS for AutoCAD add-in, but then I add some other things because a lot of people are not familiar with the add-in and rely mostly on Pro or other Esri products. But this is the kind of agenda. So we're going to talk about high level, how you can use with CAD data in GIS and GIS data in CAD. And then there are kind of two main topics there, the ArcGIS for AutoCAD for the CAD users, and then the ArcGIS Pro is the main one for the GIS users, but you can also use this in like Map View in ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise, but how you can work with the CAD data mostly in Pro here today, again, because of the time that we have. And then we're going to talk about GeoBIM. I don't know if anyone is using that. That's more like a kind of extension, so maybe you don't have access to it. Maybe you have seen some screenshots and you're curious about how it works. And then some roadmap, which I haven't looked at I think most of you are aware that ArcGIS Online updated yesterday, so I haven't really updated this to the latest updates, but that will give an idea of kind of what was released yesterday or what's coming up in the near future. So when you talk about GIS and CAD, there are mainly those three areas that I highlight in the agenda. The first one is kind of the Pro environment, and that's where the GIS users work with the CAD data. And then you have the Autodesk products, right? And you can do a lot more there than you could a few years ago. So the majority of the presentation will be focused on this Autodesk, ArcGIS for AutoCAD, but it also works in Civil 3D, and then the latest one is this Forma one that, for the GIS people, if you haven't seen that, I have never used it, but looking at the demos and materials that we have, it looks a lot like ArcGIS Urban. So you have kind of this tool for early planning where you can overlay a lot of GIS layers, look at 3D, and I don't know exactly how that you can do there, but that's kind of the idea that I got. But AutoCAD and Civil 3D, I think it's more common since it's being supported for a little while. And then the GeoBIM, the idea with that one, if that's new to you, it's not replacing any of these other ones. It's more the way that you would interact with it would be through like an experience builder application. You have some additional widgets there, and you can create this experience where you have your GIS content, you have your BIM content, and then they're kind of synced, and you can work with them together. And you can explore documents and links associated with those documents. And it's a nice application more for like someone that's managing a project or it's not like editing data, but needs to kind of see everything that's going on in those two environments. Then here, just a little bit about ArcGIS for AutoCAD. So the main idea here is to allow the CAD users to stay in the environment that they work with, and then be able to do more there, right? So you can bring content from GIS and use that as a reference, but you can also georeference and put projections associated with your CAD files and add symbology and related records and labels and everything that you would do kind of in a basic GIS environment, right? And that's what we're going to be looking at for I'm not doing demo for all these things because, again, 30 minutes, it's like 4 different products and switching things and collaborating and sharing. So it's a lot of screenshots and kind of highlighting key areas of the workflow. But we're going to kind of look at this in more detail in a little bit here. And this is a GIS conference, right? So I can speak more from like the GIS side. These are some of the pain points that this add-in tries to solve. It's mostly allowing you to kind of empower the CAD users to do more on their side and not rely so much on you and your team. and also, get some information from your CAD more easily so that you don't have to be requesting individual files and things like that. Maybe it's more like a service architecture where things are shared to ArcGIS Online and you can grab it from there. So these are the demos for the AutoCAD piece. There are some kind of basic workflows on the left side, and then on the right side you have a little bit more advanced things. Again, for a GIS person, it's all basic, but in terms of being able to do these things in AutoCAD, when you start talking about attachments, related records, those are a little bit more advanced than just kind of putting a base map, right? So that's the idea, and the main thing to get out of this presentation today is this what I just said, like how much easier it should be to have that collaborative environment where the data can be accessing the two systems and be synced, and you're always looking at the same thing. So here is just an example, like making some edits to an airport in this area. You can see it supports curves in AutoCAD, and the idea is after the person is done doing the edits here, there is no reason to no need to export this, and send to someone in whatever way you prefer. You can do all the changes here, including the schema and changing the attributes there. And then after you do this, you can see it supports domains, subtypes, all those things. So it feels much like what you would do in ArcGIS Pro. But again, this is a user that it's working a lot with AutoCAD and knows the interface well here. So after that, you have to synchronize the changes, right? If you're kind of using one source of data for both environments, and then you tell the updates, the deletions, the new features that were added. And then once that syncs, someone on the GIS side can again add that to Pro in ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Enterprise, and that's kind of what it's being shown here. So you can see that green line that was just added there. Now it's just kind of showing something on the other, going the other way, right? Some changes being done in Map Viewer, and then, here there's no need to synchronize because you're kind of adding the data in GIS, right? But the ArcGIS, the AutoCAD users could again synchronize things, pull those changes, and then they would have the latest data there. So this is what's being shown here in this little animation. So now talking about some of the specific things. So again, that's the main idea of the presentation for this section, but let's look where you click to do some of the things that was shown there. So when you have the add-in installed, you get access to those tabs highlighted on the top. There's like a geolocation one and an ArcGIS one, and then you can define coordinate systems for the project here. And for the AutoCAD users, if I'm not using the right words, it's, just kind of how I would call things in Pro, but I would call this a project. Maybe you have a different term. And then after you have your coordinate system, if you want to check things, you can put the base map, or maybe just for reference to make some edits. And then there's this idea of creating a project area too, because I think a complaint that the product team received in the past is that I don't want to bring all my GIS data for just this area. So you can delineate these project areas, and then when you bring the GIS data, you'll be just for the area of interest. Seems like a great improvement or enhancement there. So that was more like you're starting on AutoCAD, some basic things that you do. You define the coordinate system. You maybe add some reference layers, and if you need additional GIS layers, then much like you would do in Pro, there's an Add Layers button. You click on that button. I hope everybody can see the size is okay. But there's a Add Data there. You get a dialog box just like you would get in a lot of Esri products, where you can access things from the Living Atlas, from your content, from your organization, and then once you find what you're looking for, in this case, I think it was some utility data. So the gray lines, if you can see them, that's the utility data that was brought in from GIS to AutoCAD. And then, you can work with that data after that. Another thing that you can do, so now that you have kind of set up the environment, you have the base layers that you need, it's kind of, do the edits. Again, we're still on the more basic side, so what you would need to do is access that layer that you wanted to make the edits to. And then once you select that, this was shown in the animation at the beginning. Again, you have an attribute table, just like you have in GIS, where you can make selections. People, the AutoCAD users, they don't have to kind of guess what things are called. You have everything in the domains and subtypes already created for them, and then they can go there, make those changes, and then this, again, was shown there just kind of step by step now. Then just like Pro, right, in AutoCAD you have these two sides, so now going to the kind of the contents pane, not the catalog pane, there they could synchronize the changes, and the GIS user will be able to access those updates. Now, moving to the more advanced side, we're going to talk about things like symbology, labels, and how, the recent enhancements on that side. Let's start with the symbology, labels, and a couple other things. Here's an example where, you have your CAD data. Maybe your points look like this. For most GIS users, including myself, like if I open GIS and I saw this, I would have no idea what's going on, right? But CAD users, you might be used to working with data sets like this. And my understanding is that this is represented as Kogel points here, and there's some other ways to represent those points. So if you click here, I don't think anyone can read, because even from here it's a little bit hard to read, but there's a feature symbols, and then there's an option to assign a symbol. And then you get a little pop-up that you can change that to block. Trying to remember what it's called, but it's a kind of block representation instead of those Kogel points. And then you can see now the symbol looks more like a GIS symbol. It has the dynamic attributes on the label there that's coming from the data, right? And you can change those things just like you would do in GIS. And then, again, if you want to change those labels, you can open a full attribute table like we would call in GIS and look at all the fields that you have, choose one that you want to use instead of that one that's being used there. And then when you select things, you go to labels now and then generate a new label. And then you have some options here, including some kind of where you want to place the label. And after that, you have, again, this dynamic label that you can change based on the attributes. And I think for the GIS people, the value here is more understanding how people do some of these things in CAD. If you guys have to talk to them, and for the CAD users, maybe this is too basic for you, but maybe you haven't used this add-in at all, and this at least shows some visuals here. This is kind of beginner level presentation, right? So that's not too complicated on the CAD workflow side of things. So here, it's just looking how you can access the attachments. So there is another button there under that geolocation tab. And you can look at your attachments. You can look at like PDFs, photos. There is another option here to look at related records. So on the same place that you look, it's the identify tool. So you can, when you click, you can get different things. And one is the attachments, the other one, the related records shown here. And then you get a table. This could be like inspection data or something that's being done in different project areas. Again, very much like you would expect in GIS. Here, it's showing the option select by attribute. I don't know if this is something common for CAD users, but for GIS users, this is very common, right? When I was interviewed for jobs like 10 years ago, I remember taking tasks at the company, and they would ask us to do this, like select by attribute, select by location. So this is one thing that you can do here now. If I don't know if that's something new to you, but the example here is like you have all those symbols. They're all lights, right, and like light bulbs in different structures, and maybe you have to replace them. And if there is a specific manufacturer that you're having an issue with, you can come here, you can search for that manufacturer, and then it's going to find all the bulbs that are from a specific one, and then you can, when you replace them, you can do a kind of a bulk update and change to a different one. So this is just a simple example, but depending on different things that you have that need to do that kind of bulk editing, you can select by the attributes first and then change to kind of all of them. Now, if we go a little bit deeper on this creating and sharing content here, you can see that you can create like layer, there's this thing called document feature layer in CAD that you can create a layer there, and then you can share that later as a GIS layer. So it's hard to see this little dialog box here too, but it's something similar to what you'd see in GIS, like what's the name of the feature, what attributes you want to include, what's the geometry, right? And then after that, you create that layer in CAD. You don't have to create something GIS kind of to be added in CAD. You can start the workflow here. You create, if you want to add any new fields, there is a button on the bottom that you can do that. And then, again, just like you do in Pro, you add all the fields, the domains, everything you want there. And then when you open the attribute table, you can see, in this case, it was just like a new feature with one additional field. So you can see that one here, and all the values are 0. One thing that you can do this is a simple example, so it'll be easy to just type everything. But if you have a lot of, you need to populate, there is this option to, under labels, generate. You can basically click on the polygon in this case, and then click on the attribute that you're trying to kind of extract, and it automatically populate those attributes for you. So I don't know, this, I was going to include some animation instead of screenshots, but then some of the demos are like 5 minutes long. If you can see like the amount of information here, we would need more than 30 minutes. But basically, the person clicked here first, and then just make sure the line was touching those numbers, and then automatically, and then did that a couple times or a few times, and then all the numbers came here. So now when you X that in GIS after you kind of went ahead a little bit. So now here they're sharing that, right? So again, you are connected to one portal, could be ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, just like you would do on the GIS side, like a title, a description, those types of things, some labels maybe. And then when you publish that, then the GIS person can access the data. You can see maybe all the numbers there, including that number that was generated by the tool is there. And it was a workflow that started in CAD and very kind of easily was available to the GIS users without, a kind of process to get that data. Here is another workflow that it's showing how to bring some additional data from GIS. So in this case, again, everything starts on the Add Data button. Then you pick the location where your data is stored. In this case, it added all these elevation points. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of green on my screen here, but a lot of little dots everywhere. Then you can, on the kind of the catalog pane in GIS side there, you can click on that group layer, and then you can kind of create a surface here. And again, these are things that can be shared, if you need to edit, and if you have exit editing, you can do that. So just kind of, again, showing how you can bring data from GIS, do some changes here, and kind of share it back. Again, I mentioned at the beginning, the main thing is highlighting how this collaboration is much easier now than it was 5-10 years ago. And these are the 3 main takeaways from this section. We're going to look at other things too, but first is this ability for the CAD users to just find the content they need. They can do all their edits there, and then you don't have to learn all the GIS skills and the tools there. You can just do everything CAD. So now moving to Pro, I don't have as many screenshots here, just kind of some key things for the GIS users, because I've been displaced a few times where I get some data that I don't work with. It could be CAD data, it could be some other type of scientific data, especially like when I was in grad school. You add that to a map and it's completely wrong location, right? You're not sure how to bring that to the right location. So just kind of how to, if you have a CAD file and something's not looking right, maybe some things that can help you work with the CAD file more easily. So there are kind of 3 options to add CAD data to Pro. One is just drag and dropping something on the map. The other one is the Add Data button, just like you have one in CAD, you have one in Pro. And then the third one, that's kind of the best one because it gives you more options, is kind of on the catalog pane. It could be a local file. It could be a connection that you create to the Autodesk cloud, and you're kind of accessing directly from there. But regardless, you can right-click on that feature and you can get additional information, like is there a spatial reference associated with it, and then any other thing that you can, that you need, Here is just a screenshot of the properties table. You can see under one of those items here, there's a lot of information, and you can click on the other ones as needed. But yeah, basically the last one is the best one because it allows you to access the property for like individual features and also like the whole, when you publish a service, it can be just one feature or it can be like a collection of different layers. Same thing here, so you can access the properties for the entire group or just individual features. And here's just an example, like bringing data. So what I just said, it's kind of being shown on that side of the screen. So you have a group on the top and then all the individual layers, and there isn't one selected. They just drag and drop a bunch of CAD data, and that's what they end up with in ArcGIS Pro here. So this, again, maybe something you're going to be editing, maybe something just for reference for additional GIS work that you have to do. And what I was referring to in the beginning, right, it's like you have this new CAD data that you don't know very well, or you're trying to use for something and it's not in the right location. These are kind of the steps here to georeference that. And it can be something more 2D or it can be something 3D too, right? So the first best practice here is to assign a projection like to your map, right, in Pro. And then you can bring the CAD data. Again, there are like 3 different ways that we just saw, Maybe you just click and say add to map. They'll add it to your map. And then, again, if you are bringing this from the Autodesk cloud, then you have to establish that connection. Just like you connect to a database, right? There's an option there that, it's kind of what it's being shown. Like on the top image there's an option there to connect to the cloud system. And then after that, there are some tools on the ribbon that you can use to help you georeference. Those are the 3 main ones, and I'm going to kind of show that a little bit more here. So this one is defining the projection for the layer that you just brought, the CAD layer. And then you can see created that projection file that we have with our GIS data. But it's still showing in the wrong place. So one thing that you can do if you kind of have an idea where this is geographically is to use the locate tool to take you to that part of the world, right? So now you are in your project area here, but you can't see your CAD data, right? So there is a tool that says move to display. When you click there, that brings the data. It's still not georeferenced, it's just kind of in the right location now. And then by adding a few control points here, you can make sure that, makes the adjustments and then it looks right. So it's just going to click on one corner and then select the location on the base map, click on another corner and then click on a different location. And now, pretty soon here, apply those changes. Now everything looks right. And when they open the folder here, there's a new file there that has that transformation that was just applied to kind of stretch things. So that's, kind of the beginnings for that 2D data, and then for if you have a 3D model like this of a new project, very common for like urban users where they have all their projects in 3D displayed at a web application. So you bring that in, it's not in the right location. In this case, there's another tool called scale and rotate. You can use the scale one to make sure that you get it to the right side, and then use the rotate one to just kind of position it on where it's supposed to go. So, they scaled already, they rotate it, and then they can kind of move it to where it's actually supposed to go. So, again, I know this can be frustrating, so I want to show this. Same idea in ArcGIS Online, right, in terms of kind of bringing CAD data. You can bring the data to map view and do different things, but usually when you're georeferencing, doing things like this, you're in the Pro environment, and that's why I wanted to show this one. Now, if you have some CAD data that you want to export, to GIS. So let's say you have a local file, you add it to your map. Okay, things look good, but I want to save this in my geo database. You have these 3 tools here that will allow to do that export. Some of them are better if you just have like one simple file. Some of them better if you wanted to kind of add to an existing layer. And the last one is if you have multiple files, that's kind of the best geoprocessing tool to export everything at once. So we talked about the ArcGIS for AutoCAD, how to do some basic things in Pro with CAD data. And now with the last 5 minutes that we have here, let's talk a little bit about this GeoBIM thing. So this, it's kind of like an extension. So if you go to Experience Builder and you don't see the widgets there, it might be because you don't have access to this. With that said, I think at least the GIS people here know the user type changes that happened last year, right? And they're still happening because some of the product teams are still kind of figuring out how to license things under those new user types. This could change, maybe changed yesterday, I don't know because I haven't checked, but the idea it's an additional cost. It's small. I think last time I checked it was like $200 per user or something to have access to this. But basically, it creates this connection between your Autodesk system and your GIS system, and you can start creating those experiences that I mentioned where you have access to both in like one app. And then there are some apps here where you can kind of access that. Experience Builder, I think it's the main one. So here are just the steps, right? You're going to connect to your Autodesk cloud, and then you're going to sync the data, you're going to create, configure those experiences, and then people can use them. So here's an example where they're in Experience Builder. If you're more on the CAD side and you haven't seen this, this is a kind of app builder application. And then you add your scene. You start dragging and dropping some of those Autodesk, the GeoBIM widgets. So there are 3 of them here. They have a little icon on the corner there. And after you configure everything, you connect to your map. When you start clicking around different areas on the map, these widgets will show different things. So in the beginning, it's kind of like there's no document to be displayed, but then when you make a selection, you can see now I can work with my BIM model and my GIS layers and map here, and even the 3D layers that I may have, and kind of work with those 2 things together. Here's another example, just kind of, the other one was very far away, but like maybe you have like a new bridge, new structure that you're building, you have a design in GIS, but then the BIM provides a lot more details on the actual kind of like the as-built structure. That was really quick for the GeoBIM, but it's also more specialized. But I think you get the idea. Again, it's not replacing anything. It's more allowing people that don't need to make changes to the data in those other 2 environments that we talked about to just visualize things. And when they use like field maps, connect to the Autodesk cloud, they can go to the field, do inspections, and then people can see all the updates in near real time, on that GeoBIM, maybe web app that you have configured for them too. So the roadmap, there are a lot of things here that, it's easier to understand if you're on the AutoCAD side, because a lot of this, most of this, if not all of them, were extracted from the ArcGIS for AutoCAD presentation. So in Pro, the things that we talked about, it's nothing new in GIS, right? But a lot in terms of empowering the CAD users to do more in AutoCAD. So a lot of the language and the things they're going to see here, it's more on that side. But I think branch versioning for GIS users, that's a big one. If you have something that's versioned and they have to use that in AutoCAD, they can even create the versions and do everything there. I didn't show that. It's kind of more specific, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.